Yeah, but let me give you a small, short, brief introduction of me. My name is Samir Khan. I've been in Finland now for 10 years, in professional life for around 17 years. I started my career with Capgemini, then I moved to Tieto, then AFRI Consulting, which was formerly Puru Forest Consulting. And now I'm working with Spinverse. And at Spinverse, I'm working as a subject matter expertise and ecosystem developer, where we help companies build open innovation ecosystems and then apply for European and national level funding. So I'm also working with Tampere and Jyväskylä universities in some of the consortiums. To the right, you see a very simplistic view of the coverage of my career. And as you can see, I've worked cross industry. I've worked across all the major customers in Finland, and I've tried to create business technology solutions that also had business model innovation, digital platforms, and digital technology solutions for these companies. I will share this presentation with you after this call. And if you have any questions, apart from today, you can always email me or set up a separate call. But the structure for today is very, very simple. These are the kind of 5 bullet points when it comes to business model innovation we'll be going through. I request all the people that are viewing this presentation to note down their questions slide by slide if they have any. And I'll try to finish this in half an hour. And then last 15 minutes, we can have a sparring session or a question answer session. So there is a lot to cover in 30 minutes when it comes to business model innovation. So at any point of time, if you feel that there is information overload, don't be afraid. I will try to, try to highlight which are the main points you need to keep in your mind when it comes to business model innovation as such. So let's begin, with the basics. So essentially, business model innovation is about value creation. It's about supporting the organization's value proposition, and then the customer's need or the problem statement that you're trying to solve, and then also, of course, trying to understand what would be your operating model, which means how you will deliver the value towards the customer. A general myth or a common mistake is to equate business model innovation with earning logic or revenue generation model. I would not say that earning logic or revenue generation model are separate from business model innovation, but they are subset of business model innovation. So if business model innovation is a big circle, earning logic and revenue generation models would be, a comprehensive and an integral and a substantial part of it as such. Let's try to take a look at the evolution of business model innovation. So, after the industrial revolution in the 1900s and 1950, we had this mass production business model. I think US was the only homogeneous market during that time, and within US you had railroads and telecommunications and electricity, the 3 big industries run by huge and big family corporations as such. And after World War II, you had this marketing-led business models that focused on delivering consumer goods, not even services, but more on consumer goods era. And I think once we had the internet and we had the technology evolution and disruption starting somewhere in mid 90s, we started understanding that, okay, e-commerce is a part of it. So Amazon is as old as, starting to be in existence somewhere in 1997 as a very humble online bookstore. But the end game for Amazon was always e-commerce and trying to sell everything that they can from anyone they can to whoever they can. And now for the past decade or so, we have this customer-centered business models where everything is about the customer, everything is about customer's problem, and everything is about what value customers demanding, whether it's B2B or B2C. And I think Gabriel had mentioned that today one of the topic was value selling and solution selling. So we'll come to that and we'll try to touch upon that. And then now in the future, when we are moving towards generative AI or industrial AI, the idea is to do things autonomously and have those data-driven predictive business models where everything will be delivered or consumed at a touch of a button, and people would be living in an ideal, happy state, kind of a thing, which from my personal point of view looks very sort of dystopian and emotionless, but nevertheless, that's what the analysts are kind of predicting, in that direction. Then there are a lot of frameworks that you will find in the market of how people classify business model. So whether it's the basic business concept, like creating a new market or a new segment or a new need or a demand. If you take a look at most of the startups, they are working on the same topic but have a different approach. Some are trying to take a look at market view. Some are trying to solve a very specific problem in a niche way, and some are focusing on the technology itself rather than in the early stages, rather than looking towards how this can be positioned towards any customer need. And then, of course, selection of customers or strategy differentiation or production system itself, or then how your organizational structure is. That also could be a trigger for business model innovation, or then, of course, by distribution channel. There is no right or wrong way here. These are like perspectives. In the last part of the presentation, we'll come to the key building block of business model innovation. So when you have time, whenever you have time, you can probably go through a lot of white papers or different frameworks that will help you understand that, okay, which are the triggering points in an organization which leads to business model innovation as such. Now there's a very important topic that's related to business model innovation, especially in the past, let's say, decade and a half, since we have Google, YouTube, and then of course Apple Store, and those kind of platform products. And there's a concept called zero marginal cost society. We'll take a quick look at it. So essentially, zero marginal cost society refers to when you can produce each additional unit of a good or service without any zero cost. So if you take a look at YouTube, people are uploading their videos, or whether it's Instagram or TikTok, people are building content basically at zero marginal cost, which means that if you have a camera, if you learn some skills, you can actually produce videos after videos, content after content without any capex. Of course, there might be a little bit of operational expenditure, but that's very minimal comparing to what you would have to do if you were producing your own movie. So in today's world, you can actually make your movie and then upload it on the internet and also get paid for it. And essentially, zero marginal cost society refers to the digital platforms that are enabling this, whether it's consumer sector or industrial sector. For example, there is a possibility that your house might start generating electricity at some point of time, and you might sell it on open market. And essentially, whatever energy you're consuming is less than what you're generating at some point of time, which means that you would be getting paid to actually use the energy. And the idea here is, distributed environment where each of the consumer and each of the player in an economy is actually contributing towards a good or service. And more essentially, we are trying to democratize data and services, and everybody can be an active part of it. Now, this is the ideal definition. To what extent this can be applied towards B2B is still unknown, and people are not sure about it. But when it comes to the consumer market, you can clearly see that zero marginal cost is already playing a big role in how our lives are being shaped every day as such. And to understand zero marginal cost society, or the big picture of platform economy, or the asymmetric business models that Google, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook are actually playing. You need to understand that what business they are into. If you take a look at Google, they are into data business, but they are selling phone. They are investing in connecting different countries and their servers through their own fiber optic network. They are also having their own Play Store, and everything at the end of the day, when the dust settle down, for them, what is important is acquisition of data through all these sources, so that they can have a compounded annual growth of their ad revenue sales, because most of the sales for Google comes from ad revenue. And then they start investing that money in technologies that will enable their value chain. And these technologies not essentially focusing on ad revenue, but how to have a market presence and build the network effect. Similarly, with Amazon, they started with a bookstore, then they introduced the Kindle Fire, and then they have the e-commerce. Now, interesting part about Amazon is the e-commerce data that they had. They started building their own products and own white label solutions for consumer, and they have a bigger market share now in certain geographies where they're competing with local suppliers as such. So when we see in today's world any business, we should not see transactionally of what they are doing or what they are showing or what they intend to do. You need to also try to extrapolate what their end game could be. And a simple example in Finland's context is Volt. Everybody thinks Volt is in delivery services. Yes, it's true to a certain extent, but what they are really into is the consumer food division or the restaurant industry. So currently, Volt is investing heavily into this cloud kitchen concept, where they would build the infrastructure for kitchens. And if you have a menu and if you have a chef, the chef can cook there, and Volt will deliver that to the consumer. So essentially, they are trying to take over the restaurant industry in a very subtle way. They are investing in AI. They are investing in any technology that can enable them to connect the demand with the capacity that they are trying to build. So the key takeaway here is understanding, how to aggregate the demand, and most importantly, then how to aggregate the capacity. And you don't have to own the capacity. You can aggregate the capacity through a ecosystem thinking, where there are small players having the same capacity, and you are trying to just orchestrate that or have a little bit of control over it. If you take a look at Apple, yes, their main business is devices, but of course, the App Store helps them to ensure that their devices are locked into consumers. So anyone using an Apple product cannot use Google Play Store, and it is exclusively for Apple people. Of course, it has a brand value, but you need to also understand that their business model is not simply selling phones. It's the service ecosystem that they have built around it, which also contributes towards the value that they're trying to build in the market and deliver to the consumers. And in definitive term, this is called asymmetric business model, where you're selling something, but that's not your end game. You're selling something to get market foothold. And once you get the market foothold, you try to sell something else based on that. It's as simple as that. A lot has been done in B2C when it comes to platform economy, whether it's Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, Netflix, whatever it might be. But when it comes to B2B, things become complex, because the volume of customers in B2B is limited. The service and the solution setups are complex. The traditional supply chains, whether it's upstream, midstream, or downstream, that are actually connected to the end user, are capex heavy, and there's a lot of investment. A quick example would be that, of course, BMW, Volkswagen, or even General Motors could have come with an electric vehicle when Tesla was launched. It was not difficult for them. The technology was there, but they had already invested in production capacity for diesel and fossil fuel cars. So if you have invested billions there, it's a difficult choice for the organization to completely change their vision and completely change their decision tactically. And in industry terms, this is what we call as stranded assets. So if you are investing in a physical or a capex asset right now, will it be stranded after 10 years? Can you overhaul it? Can you retrofit it with something that you're trying to do extraordinary in the business 10 years down the line? And that's the essential dilemma between B2C and B2B. And if you will be working in the coming years for any big organization, and if any of the executive tells that I want to be Steve Jobs or Tim Cook and I want to create Apple or something, you need to make them realize very politely that if it's a B2B company especially, that the examples are good, but the applications are different, and the application of a platform economy to a B2B is very, very challenging, and it needs to be thought through. It is not as simple as creating a platform and then asking your consumers to consume your services or whatever the business value is throughout the platform. Moving on, just trying to jot down what are the key characteristics. So whenever now you see a company doing something, you can use this simplistic approach to make your own notes or do your own analysis. So strategically, they are trying to secure revenue and profits through asymmetric business model. So what their main product is not their only business. They are doing something else which is complementing their main business. They are ensuring demand and supply orchestration, which means that they sit on top of their supply chain. They are not in midstream, they are not in downstream, they are not in upstream. They are the ones that are having end-to-end visibility towards the demand and the supply matrix. Then tactical, they are always powered by partner ecosystem. They do not have vendors, they have partners, which means that each partner brings with it either a technology competency, a consulting competency, or then they have joint sales together. So it's as simple as let's assume that you would like to have a small food stall that sells flavored whatever ice popsicles. So there might be one company that gives you the flavors. There might be other company that gives you the food colors. There might be other company that says that I will help you with day-to-day operations. So essentially, you are not doing anything. You're just orchestrating these capabilities, simply putting. And then, of course, enabling industry convergence and symbiosis, which means that, for example, K-Market has a very, very big loyal customer base, and you might be knowing the K-Market card that you use to collect the points. I think as recent as 3 years ago, K-Market was thinking about becoming an electricity provider for its customer base. They would buy electricity from the open market and sell it to their consumers at a discounted price as an additional service for them, so that when they buy more from the K-Market, they get heavy discount on the electricity. So very classic case of asymmetric business model and industry convergence, where they would use their own customer database in a very innovative way and provide additional value. And then, of course, democratization of data. People think that democratizing data will hurt your company. But if you know the end game, if you know that, what value you would like to have, definitely you can democratize data. It's harder in B2B because a lot of data is corporate specific, a lot of IPR is involved. So it's not as simple as democratizing the data in the consumer business per se. And there are, of course, GDPR and security issues. And operationally, there is near zero marginal cost for new additional services. It's as simple as the chicken that lays, the golden egg, zero marginal cost. The chicken is just laying the eggs, and you are having those golden eggs. And the last part is, converging the value attributes, which means that whatever product service system that you have, or a service, you try to merge the values around the specific service or the product. And value attributes means how it is delivered to the customer, how the customer consumes it, how the customer feels after consumes it. So for example, you might have a brick and mortar store for selling clothes. but you would also like to have an online version of it. And where you cannot reach through brick and mortar stores, there you want to reach through online store. And you would also like to have a bigger warehouse for newer collections that you cannot fit into your brick and mortar store. So essentially now here, each asset, whether it's the online store or the brick and mortar store or the warehouse, has their own value attributes that contribute towards customer satisfaction, and you're trying to converge this and make it one service, like an omni-channel service. That's the terminology that industry uses. And again, it's very difficult in B2B. For example, Autotech would like to deliver their mining equipment as a service, which means that they guarantee a production capacity for the mines at the end of the year. It's a very interesting business model to have, where the customer pays every month or based on the production output. And Autotech ensures that they service the machine, they install the machine, they take care of the machine, and they use a digital platform to monitor and do the analytics part. The difficult part here is the mining industry itself is not digital savvy. And the investors that invest in a mine are actually okay with doing a lot of manual labor, because the countries where you have the cobalt mining or the lithium mining, for example, for batteries, they rely on manual labor because it's cheap. I know it's exploitative, but even if you want to sell something in B2B, you also need to understand that the environment needs to be digitally savvy or matured enough to be part of your business model innovation in that sense. So implementing a business model that you have innovated also has its own challenges when it comes to the customer maturity itself. So whenever you can, please do read this, the Zero Marginal Cost Society. There are a lot of copies probably in your university library, or even in your Jyväskylä, Tampere, or whichever city you are in the city libraries. And if you can't, just order one. I think it should be around, 15 to 20 euros, but a very good investment, and will give you absolutely brilliant insights about how the world is changing when it comes to digital platforms, platform economy, or the business model innovation part. Now, the operating environment. So today's corporate world is, buzzed with buzzwords: servitization, platform economy, green transition. Everybody wants to be circular. There are future technologies, coming specific for their industries and in the general arena. Shared economy, sustainability is moving now from reporting to actually having sustainable products. And then now, I think a month ago or month and a half ago, you have this generative AI. So everybody is like, oh, that's going to disrupt my life or my business, and how, I don't know. And then, of course, there's this corporate inertia of run versus grow. Do I focus on the run business, keep the lights on, or do I focus on the grow? But I don't have the money and the resources there. And then, of course, should my innovation be incremental, which means that I do step by step, or should it be punctuated, which means that something extraordinary happening all of a sudden? And then, of course, the age-old question about being explorative. So there is a technology like generative AI. Let's explore what it can do for business. And then there are some business that, let's integrate generative AI, create specific use cases that can help us to be efficient, or deliver additional value to the customers. So these are the kind of questions that organizations face. And when you try to have a business model innovation workshop with some executives, they'll come up with all the excuses that you see here. It will be very difficult for you to sort of convince them, or pass your message if you're working as a management consultant. But you have to be tenacious, and you have to think about every other possibility and try to break it down into as many pieces as you would like to, so that you can feed them with spoon if it is needed to be. Now, there are some business model examples. For example, there are like multi-sided and big data-driven platforms like Airbnb, Google, that you know. In the B2B arena, you have the Predix platform from General Electric, and then Clocker and Co, which is I think a German company, has their own digital platform, B2B, providing services for their consumers as well as their partners. And then you have this on-demand, subscription-driven, collaborative consumption, circular economy-based, things. So I don't know if you guys, use public transport much. I'm guessing yes. And if you see any bus stop in Finland is JC Decox. And they have a very interesting model. They say to HSL that you don't have to invest in bus stops. We'll build the bus stops, but the surface area of the bus stop belongs to us, and we will use that for marketing purposes, and we'll sell marketing services on top of it. So you are actually going a step ahead, and you are acquiring that land, and you're building the bus stop, and in return you get free space to market. SafeChem is a very interesting example for circular economy. So they used to sell hazardous chemicals. Now they have come up with a service where they will also help the companies to sort of dispose of the chemicals that they are using and refill them when they require with a certain order. So essentially they are trying to orchestrate the value chain, and they are trying to move from being this wholesale provider, simple wholesale provider of chemicals, to actually providing it as a service. Mitchell is providing a tire as a service, and Deso is providing carpet as a service. And then of course there's this peer-to-peer TransferWise, which I have used for over 10 years and saved tons of money in transferring money. There is Chemex in Mexico that is having this unique concept of getting orders from all the construction work that's happening in and around Mexico area, and then providing the cement as a service kind of solution. Kilimo Salama is an African example where they are having this peer-to-peer insurance services for the farmers. And when I send this presentation, just go to each of the companies and check out their business model, and you will understand that it's not simply about providing a service and getting paid for it, but the machinery behind how you deliver that service and what other partners you meet would be very interesting for you people. Now, coming to industry convergence and reimagining value chain. So as I said, digital platform is the biggest disruption. It is changing interactions between players, and you can think big, you can think beyond your own product, you can think about the entire value chain, you can think about changing your role from being a manufacturer to an ecosystem orchestrator. And a biggest example right now that's happening is Stora Enso and wooden blades. So Stora Enso is creating this special LVL2 plywood. They already had that technology in the recent years. They didn't have the capacity. And then they started to understand, okay, what is the application of this special engineered wood? And one application, was actually the turbine blades of a windmill. And windmills that we have right now that generate, the natural power or wind power, they are made of glass fiber or carbon fiber, which is very hard to recycle or even dispose of. So Stora Enso is now in partner with wooden blades, and soon, maybe in a year or so, these blades will be commercialized and they can be retrofitted on existing windmills. So the business model of being just a wood provider or a wood product provider and changing to value driven part where you're engineering the product in order to provide value in an alternate value chain where you didn't have presence at all. So this highlights what value-driven selling or solution-driven selling, can take shape as. Circular economy is very interesting topic for all the people, and this is a picture by Bain. So as you see, any kind of transformation in any business requires changing either the operating model or the business model. But in essence, in practicality, both needs to change. So you cannot just have cosmetic business model change with a fancy digital platform and your operating model is, not supporting it, or you change the operating model, but you don't change the business model. So it has to go hand in hand and in tandem. Oh, we are already half an hour approximately half an hour mark. I'll try to be a little bit quick. So the best way I can try to now sum up the learning is, if Google was a facilities management company. Google is not a facilities management company. It's a data-driven, data company. But if at all Google was a facilities management company, how it would do that? It would essentially create a smart space ecosystem that would take all the Google managed asset data. They could use Honeywell equipment, they could use Schneider equipment, they could use X number of companies that are in building automation system arena, and make them as partner of their ecosystem. So they are not producing any automation system, but they are simply accessing the data. They would be directly connected to the consume through Alexa or any other smart home network system and get that data. They could also get the finance and claims data from the insurance companies or the banks that are financing the building construction or the maintenance of the building. They could get the third-party contractor data by plugging in, the providers of equipments and goods and services needed in order for a building to stay or survive as such, like K-Rauta or whatever those companies are. And then they would also, connect their own ecosystem with, let's say, Kone Digital Platform APIs or the Eco open data ecosystem. And then they would, also have a plugin for third-party assets, compliance data for the government part, and then third-party services from Nokia or communications company or the heating company or kitchen service provider, whatever that may be. And they would do this smartly through APIs. So essentially they are not making anything for a smart home or facility management, but they have built now an aggregator platform where they are collecting all the data and then orchestrating the value chain. And they are probably on that path because they have already invested in Google Nest, and they are looking into third-party services. They might do it for one geography, one city at a time, but they can scale up quickly because their problem is not, making assets. Their main, the benefit is having a digital platform that can be scaled up. And because they are pioneers in data, they know what they are talking about. So this is what I had imagined. If this is happening in reality, I don't know. This is speculative, but this is one good exercise. So you can take any company that's in the digital space and imagine, how it could be if it is it is in the B2B space. So, imagine if Google was a forest company like UPM. What would be its business model? What would it be selling? What it might orchestrate, for example. And if you want to know if Google was a forest company, what it would do, you can go to my LinkedIn profile. I have written an article over there and try to imagine that. But as an exercise, you can take some other company and imagine it as what it would be in that space. So Google staying true, it will be a data-centric, data-driven facilities management company as such. There are business model innovation canvas framework, which is the most standard one. You can, as a practice, take this and start, applying this to the known companies in Finland. If you would like to know how this is built, apologies, we cannot go through this in detail right now. And then there's this Odyssey 3.14 framework, which was released, I think, 3 or 4 years ago by HEC Paris. This is also a very exhaustive and a very appreciative inquiry-driven framework where you ask the right questions, and then there are like 21 or 22 questions. If you are able to answer those questions, essentially you are building the business model canvas, but in a different way. You can take a look at these frameworks in your free time, and if you have any questions, just feel free to get in touch with me through email. And then, of course, what is important for business model innovation? A very, very short story. So the company that I'm talking about is Ball Corporation. So they started making wooden containers or vessels for drinking water or cooking or storaging. And then they started with this glass beakers and equipment required for laboratory. And somewhere around in 1996, they realized that their business was going down, and they realized something very, very important, that they are not into wooden containers. They are not into glass containers. They are not into fiber containers. They are actually in the business of containment. They know how to contain things. They know how to contain chemicals. They know how to contain people. So essentially, when they realize that their business identity is not about a specific material, their business identity is about the idea of containment, they went into the aerospace technology as well. So right now, their business is creating and manufacturing aluminum bottles that you can use day to day consumer, and they are a very very big supplier of aerospace containment materials and containers that are probably on the different aircrafts or whatever vehicles that are used on Mars rover or something like that. The key that I wanted to bring here is that the most important point for any business model innovation is trying to identify what is your identity. If you have an identity crisis, you cannot move ahead. You might think that you're doing business model innovation, but you will fail, and there will be a lot of firing in the company because, okay, who was leading this or how this was leading this. But if you are going to be a consultant or working in strategy or working even in the business technology space, always try to understand that whichever company you're joining, try to make your own view about what is the business identity. And I'll give you a very, very quick example in terms of Finnish term. Probably that's my last slide. Look at Posti versus Volt. Volt started 2015. They had the first mover advantage. They had the business technology approach. They didn't work on, trying to make warehouses or vehicles. They started building a technology platform where their intent was to orchestrate the demand from the consumers and connect it with this gig economy kind of approach where individuals could deliver it. There was no incumbency baggage, which means that there was no hierarchical organizational structure or operating model that they would walk down, and their focus was on providing delivery experience. On the other hand, Posti is a follower. They have this incumbent baggage. They are essentially delivery infrastructure capacity. So if I say Posti, the first thing that comes to my mind at least is lockers. They are providing lockers, nothing more, nothing less. I don't see any value. I see them as a infrastructure capacity provider for logistics aggregator like Volt, and they lacked vision. Now, to prove this, Posti has 20,000 employees, and within their e-commerce and package services, they have reported 681 million euros. On the other hand, Volt has 4,000 employees, 23 countries. They own the digital platform. They don't own people. People are not on their payroll. I mean, the people that actually deliver the food. Estimated 970 million euros revenue per employee is around 200,000. And the point being here, of course, Volt is still having net loss. Their EBIT is negative. That's another story, another discussion for another time. But the thing is that Posti could have done what Volt did. Posti could have broken that, but Posti did not. So you also need to understand that it's not simply about innovation. It's not simply about doing something extraordinary. It's also about getting your basics right. And by basics, I mean understanding your business identity. Posti has not yet identified what it is, whether it's going to be an infrastructure service provider somewhere in the midstream, upstream, or whether it actually wants to orchestrate the logistics business in the Nordics part. And with that, we come to an end.